Right then, welcome back everyone. Now before we start, I just want to say thank you so much for the support on the Puss in Boots video. It's literally doubled my total channel views, so thank you very much. If you haven't seen it already, go check it out, but only after this video. Anyways, on to today's video. Now if you've seen any of my videos before, it'll probably come as absolutely no surprise to you, that as well as loving films, I also love video games. However, when the two worlds of film and gaming collide, the results are unpredictable. Having said that, seeing as how the new Last of Us series is some of the best television I've watched ever, and a shining example of how a video game adaptation should be made, I thought it would be fun to look back at some of the other film adaptations of video games to see how they compare. And so today, I'm going to be looking at 6 different video game film adaptations and deciding once and for all who was the best to ever do it. Now just to be clear, I'm only going to be looking at films that are based off video games, not the other way around. Otherwise I think I'd be here all day. And with that, let's get into it. So sit back, relax and enjoy. Now we've got to start by talking about The Last of Us, seeing as it is the pinnacle of video game film adaptations that all other films on our list should be aspiring to. And I know it's a series, not a film, but please just ignore that, let's just move on. For anyone that doesn't know, The Last of Us is about a global pandemic caused by a mutated fungus known as cordyceps that, when contracted, takes control of the host body and essentially turns you into a zombie. Now I know you think you've probably seen that story done a million times, but there's so much more to The Last of Us than just that. The series stars
Pedro Pascal.
Oh wow, I never knew he said his name like that. I mean, I'm a straight guy, but that was kinda... The series stars
Pedro Pascal
and Bella Ramsey as Joel and Ellie, which I have to say are pretty exceptional castings. They have great chemistry together in the scenes, and they also both look very similar to their in-game equivalents. More generally, I think we can all agree that this is one of the most faithful recreations of a video game to date, and I think that's exactly what makes it so good. I was genuinely getting deja vu watching the first episode, thinking, I'm sure I've seen this before, even though it had just come out, which clearly meant that was impossible, before I realised I was actually remembering playing the first mission of the game 4 years ago. That's how great the recreation is. Now I know some of you are probably thinking, oh, what about episode 3? I don't think episode 3 was a faithful recreation. I think episode 3 was one of the best pieces of episodic television I've seen ever. I've never seen a story so detailed and impactful, yet still succinctly concluded in one singular episode of a series ever. And to be honest, I think the uproar over it says a lot about today's world. But anyways, we've got 6 more films to talk about, so I better get a move on. Overall, this series is brilliant. It's so good, I even watched the title sequence at the start of every episode, for fuck's sake. I cannot wait for the remaining episodes, and I'd recommend it wholeheartedly to anyone. Next up on the list is Assassin's Creed. I grew up playing Brotherhood and Black Flag, so I was really excited when they announced this film. Unfortunately though, it was just crap. It had such a great cast too. Michael Fassbender, Marion Cotillard, Jeremy Irons and Brendan Gleeson, but it was just so shit. I'm assuming most people that click this video have played these games, but for those who haven't, Assassin's Creed is about a corporation called Abstergo who want to unlock the dark secrets of history. They do this by using a machine known as the Animus that uses the blood of the target's descendants to create a virtual environment of the ancestors' memory. I know, pretty confusing. The corporation is run by a group known as the Templars, and the group trying to stop them are known as the Assassins. In this film we follow Cal Lynch, who's a descendant of the assassin Aguilar de Nerja, and the Templars are trying to use him and his memories to locate the Apple of Eden. Now the main problem with this film is the plot. Nothing is ever really explained properly, like how the machine actually works, who all the random other people are at the facility, or what the Apple of Eden actually does. That one in particular really pissed me off.
Ooh, you're odd.
They just kept saying,
it contained the seed of man's first disobedience.
Like, okay, what the fuck does that mean, and how does that help anyone? The character arcs are also stupid. Cal goes from knowing nothing about his past and the Assassins, to hating everything about his past and wanting to destroy the Assassins, to becoming a fully fledged member of the Assassins and willing to kill and be killed for it after using the Animus, twice? The Animus itself was also ridiculous. In the games it's like an Avatar thing where you lay down on a bed and your mind is transferred. In this film though, the Animus is like a massive mechanical arm that the person is attached to. I just found it hilarious thinking about the scientists just watching him flail around the room while he's reenacting his memories, and they can't see anything or hear anything, they're just watching him fly around. I think you have to realise going into this film that its sole purpose was to boost interest and sales around the games, and not to be a good film. If you've played the games before, you'll come out of this disappointed, but if you haven't, then maybe it'll make you want to play them and find out more, but I wouldn't count on it. Next I want to talk about Hitman. Not the atrocious 2015 one, but the original 2007 Timothy Olyphant one. I've never really played the Hitman games properly, to be honest, only bits here and there. However, I'm pretty sure I managed to figure out the overarching idea of the character in the franchise. He's basically a bald man with a barcode on his head, and he's really good at killing people. The film though is actually fairly enjoyable, which I was very surprised about. The plot of the film just didn't make any sense at all really, but I don't think anyone really cared. Clearly the writers didn't. It's not a film you go into for the intricate story and captivating dialogue, it's a film where you shut your brain off and just watch shit happen. I think Timothy Olyphant was actually really great as Agent 47. I really enjoyed his performance. I just still can't quite believe they didn't cast Jason Statham, seeing as he already looks the part. Literally every other film he's ever made is basically this exact film, just with a different title. But anyways, I enjoyed it nonetheless. It was nice to see a bit more development of the personal side of 47 too, showing he's capable of having a relationship. Sort of. That being said, I do feel like we need to question the woman's choices in the film just a little bit. When she first meets 47, he was about to shoot her in the head, but luckily the civilian next to her got sniped, so she was fine. Then he turns up at her house, kidnaps her at gunpoint and drives her around in his boot for days. Then he murders the population of a small fucking town in front of her, and still at the end of it she's like, "Oh, you're so charming and handsome, please don't leave me." I mean, what the actual fuck? That's some proper Stockholm Syndrome right there, at its finest. Anyways, if you fancy some mind-numbing violence and bloodshed, definitely check this film out. Next up, we have Tomb Raider. I'm not going to talk about the original Angelina Jolie ones, since I never played the old Tomb Raider games. So instead, I'm going to talk about the new Alicia Vikander one. I've played all three of the new Tomb Raider games, and they're alright, but they're not my favourite to be honest. The film, however, pleasantly surprised me. It was actually pretty good. It follows the same usual story of Lara's dad going on an expedition to find some treasure and disappearing, and so Lara, 10-ish years later, decides to track him down. I actually found the story fairly interesting though, despite its formulaic nature. It had some good action sequences, lots of solving puzzles and booby traps which I always like, and of course, plenty of absurdly stupid things that Lara clearly couldn't survive, but you couldn't have a Tomb Raider without it. I think Alicia Vikander does a really good job in the role, especially considering the very large shoes he has to fill. And I also really liked Walton Goggins as the classic big bad. I think he's actually a really underrated actor. It's certainly not Oscar-winning stuff, but compared to the relatively unnoteworthy games, I think it does a great job in both its recreation and addition to the character and lore. Next up is the Sonic movie. Sonic is probably the most iconic video game character out of everyone on this list. However, having seen the original design for Sonic, I think we all went into this one slightly apprehensive. To my delight though, it was actually great. The story is basic and of course hasn't got the same sort of emotional weight as something like The Last of Us, but obviously that isn't what you're there for. It's just a really fun movie and I think it did the character justice. I particularly liked the Quicksilver-esque super slow-mo scenes. I'm not going to get into how ridiculous these scenes are and that clearly touching someone moving at that sort of speed would completely obliterate them, or in general how inconsistent super speed is in movies. I always seem to end up down that rabbit hole and I'm not doing it again. So I'm just going to say I enjoyed those scenes. The star of the show though was of course Jim Carrey. I could watch that man flail his limbs around and make stupid faces all day long. He's one of my absolute favourite actors. The scenes with him in were the best in the film by far and they had me laughing out loud. I haven't got round to watching the sequel yet, but I saw that Tails was in the post-credit scene and also that Knuckles is in the sequel, so I imagine it'll be just as good, if not better. This is a great film that anyone can enjoy and I'd highly recommend it. And lastly we have Uncharted. These games are my favourite out of all the games in this video. I probably played all four through at least 5 times each, and so I guess it's probably set my expectations higher than they should have been. I really wanted to love this film, but I just didn't. It's not terrible, don't get me wrong, but it falls way short of the games. My main point of contention was the casting. I love Tom Holland, I really do, especially as Spider-Man. I think he's brilliant for that role, but he's just simply not Nathan Drake. And similarly, Mark Wahlberg is just not Sully. He's probably closer to Nate than Sully thinking about it. I get Tom Holland was that guy at the time. I just wish they'd have cast someone more similar to the games version of Nate. Even some of the lines he had, which to be fair are no fault of Tom's, just sounded Peter Parker-ish. That being said, they did work quite well together on screen, so it wasn't all bad. The film itself was fine, just your run-of-the-mill action-adventure treasure hunting film really, with plenty of enjoyable action sequences and characters double-crossing each other the whole time. I did also really appreciate the use of the iconic Uncharted scenes, like the cargo falling out of the plane, but again it just didn't quite match up to the games. Overall I'd say worth a watch, but I'd pick National Treasure over it any day. Definitely play the games though if you haven't already. So after seeing all of that, I think we can safely say that the key to a good video game film adaptation is to stick with the existing material. When writers try to do their own thing, as we've seen, that's when things plummet. But anyways, there are plenty more of these adaptations out there, so if you want to see more of this, or just more gaming content in general, let me know in the comments. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Now you've all made it to the end, go and watch that Puss in Boots video. You're allowed to now. Or if not, why not check out this other video I made, where I talk about the new film, The Banshees of Inisherin.